If you take the time to notice that you're standing a lot, that you're not getting a lot of sleep, that you're praising God on a hard concrete floor, you're probably too old. I'm just saying, that's probably a clear indicator that you're too old to go. I mean, you might be hard on an old man like yourself. Might be pretty hard. Be pretty hard on yourself. Daddy, what am I going to do when you're not here? That question just rocked me. I mean, it took the breath out of me and it brought tears to my eyes. Daddy, what am I going to do when you're not here? And I just looked down at my son and I grabbed him up and I said, son, Daddy will always be here. Knowing that might not be entirely true, right? See, I knew I'd be leaving to go across the ocean. We were going to get on a plane and fly across the ocean. I never really thought that I might actually leave my kids permanently without me. And that one question for my son, it suddenly had me like second guessing, suddenly rethinking my decision to follow God. Because we had, just a few weeks earlier, we'd been asked to go on a mission trip to Africa, to Rwanda. And I'm telling you, I had every excuse you could think of. I don't have time. Certainly I don't have time. I can't leave my job. You know, I don't know anything about the customs. I don't have a passport. I don't know how to get a passport. And I sure don't want to take all those needles because you got to get all those immunization shots. I sure don't want that. So you name it. Whatever the excuse was, I had it. But I just felt like God was calling me. I felt like God was asking me to go to Rwanda. I knew that was the case. And now, see, this one little question for my son, suddenly I was second guessing my decision to follow God. You know, what would my kids do without me? Huh? Yeah. What would they do? Why would God ask me to put their future in jeopardy? Suddenly, following God didn't look like such a good idea. And I focused instead of focusing on the blessings of God and all the things that God would do, I started focusing on what I would be giving up. And I just couldn't leave my kids, right? I just wouldn't do it. And I just want to ask you this morning, have you ever wrestled with the decision to follow God? Has He ever asked you to do something that you're just not too sure of? You know, maybe He asked you to go on a mission trip to another country. Perhaps He asked you to change jobs or move to another location. Could be that you've been asked to make some new relationships in your life. Or maybe to distance yourself from some existing ones. Has He asked you to change your lifestyle, your spending, so you can give more to His kingdom? You know, maybe it could be something really small. Maybe He's asking you to change your daily routine, right? So you can just spend a little more time talking to Him. What's God called you to do? What's He asking you to sacrifice? And is He asking you to sacrifice something that's important to you? Your comfort, your time, your money. And how are you responding? Did you willingly let go? Or have you found yourself struggling to hold on to the important stuff? You know, is God first in your life in all things? Or maybe does He just have the top spot in the little things and you maintain control on everything that's important? I think the question becomes, why should we place God first in our lives? What has God done that warrants the top spot? You know, the stuff we're talking about is pretty important. Right? Our kids, our homes, our jobs, our money. I mean, this stuff's important, isn't it? Isn't it better to maintain a tight control on everything like that so we can kind of control the outcome? We'll give God the top spot. We'll give Him control of everything that's really small, but we'll hang on to the big stuff, right? So we can control it. We can't sacrifice those things. I mean, look here. God gave us those things in the first place, didn't He? Right? That's not the God wouldn't. Surely He wouldn't bless us with something and then ask us to give it back. That's not how God works, is it? That's exactly how I felt when my son asked that question. Daddy, what am I going to do when you're not here? A simple question asked from at the time, a little boy. He's not little anymore, but at the time. With no real idea of how that might look in the big picture. And I thought, surely God wouldn't ask me to give up my children to follow Him. Surely not. Why should I put him first? And I found the answer in Genesis chapter 22. So if you have your Bibles, maybe you've asked that same question. But you might be here this morning. You might be answering or asking that same question. So if you got your Bible, let's turn to the book of Genesis. And before we dive into the passage, let me give you just a little background, okay? A lot of you guys know about Abraham. You've heard of Father Abraham. Maybe when you were young, you sang this song. Sing it with me. Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons. That's right. I'll get the flannel board out here in a minute. We'll just really have a good time. No, so here's the thing. God had promised to make Abraham the father of a mighty nation. He said, you're going to have descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. And so Abraham, through the years, he kind of took things in his own hands. He got tired of God's timing and so forth. And at one point, Abraham and his wife Sarah, Abraham got to be concerned because he didn't have any sons. Sarah hadn't given him any sons, which I guess is natural. You think to yourself, well, how can I be a father of many nations if I don't have any sons? And so Abraham and Sarah, they got together, and Sarah said, I got an idea. You can sleep with my servant Hagar, and maybe she'll give you a son. And so he did, and she did, and before you know it, they had a son. His name was Ishmael. And then God came back down and talked to Abraham, and he said, Abraham, I'm telling you again, I'm going to make you the father of a mighty nation with descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. And Abraham said, it's all right, God. I got this. You can just set up the kingdom through my son, Ishmael. God said, no. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to set up a mighty nation and fulfill my promise through something that you've taken into your own hands. So God said, instead, you're going to have a son. Sarah's going to give you a son. In fact, he called Sarah. He said, she's going to be the mother of nations. Now, here's the real kicker. At this time, Abraham was 99 years old. And Sarah was 90. And the Bible tells us when God told Abraham this, what did he do? He laughed. He laughed. And then when Sarah heard about it, she did the same thing. She laughed too. And in a neat twist, God said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to call the kid Isaac. Name him Isaac, which means laughter. It's kind of like God said, all right, look, you want to laugh at me? You want to laugh at something I say we're going to happen? Hey, here's what we'll do. I'll give you a constant reminder. Call the kid Laughter. That'll be his name. And sure enough, about a year later, Isaac was born. So let me tell you, I don't know. If you don't read your Bible, if you've never read this, if you don't read it, or maybe if you're one of those folks who say, well, the Old Testament, I'm in the New Testament, I'm kind of in that New Covenant thing, and I want to go back and read. Look, if you've never read this, oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's better than any book, any TV show, any movie, anything imaginable. The human drama that plays out in the Bible, kingdoms rise and fall, people live and die, angels visit, all this cool stuff happens, and the deal is, it's true. So I just want to encourage you, before we go any further, go back and check all this out because it's amazing. Now, the Bible's not real clear on how many years passed since Isaac was born. They're not real sure how old he was. A lot of scholars reckon that he was pretty old, maybe as old as 20 years, whenever the events of Genesis 22 take place. So the Bible's not sure, but we do know that it's been a number of years since the birth of the boy that they called Laughter. So what we're going to do, if you got your Bible, we're going to jump in now in Genesis 22, verse 1. And here's what it says. It says, now it came to pass after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And Abraham said, here I am. And then God said, take now your son, your only son whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I shall tell you. That's odd. Now here's the thing. The Bible says that God tested Abraham. Some translations will use the word tempt, but the word tested is probably a better fit. God tested Abraham. The original Hebrew word, what it means is to put to the test, or it means testing the quality of someone through a demonstration of stress. I thought, yeah, that's pretty stressful. I don't know many things that could add more stress to my life than being asked to sacrifice my kid. And to make matters worse, he says, look, I want you to sacrifice your child, but you also got to go to the land of Moriah, which is about 50 miles from where he was. So that'd be like all of us taking off today, and we'll just walk to Morristown. Okay, take the back roads the whole way. It'd be about a 3-day journey. So Abraham couldn't even just make it, it wasn't like he could just say yes and get it over with real quick and be done. No, he had to go and think about this for 3 days. Kill your son. Not just any son. Okay? Not just any son. We want you to kill the one that I promised you, the miracle boy that I gave you in the old age. The boy that I said we're going to raise a nation through. He's going to be, this is coming through this kid. This is the one I want you. Yeah, kill that son. That's the one. And we're not told in the Bible, are we, what Abraham thought. But don't you just wonder, like what went through his mind when this happened? God, how could you ask me to do this? Wait a minute, God, this is the boy that you promised. This is what you said. Lord, what am I going to say to Sarah? Surely you're not asking me to do this, God. How could you do that? What will I do without my boy? Now, we don't know, man. I would love to have been in the tent that night to hear how this went down. We don't know what was said. We don't know what took place. All we do know is that the next morning, Abraham got up and set about doing what the Lord had commanded. If you pick back up in the Bible in verse 3, it says, So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son. And he split the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said to his young men, Stay here with the donkey. The lad and I will go yonder and worship. Don't miss this. And we will come back to you. Notice that he said, we will come back to you. He didn't say, I will come back. He said, we will come back. And already it seems that Abraham expected God to do something. See, God had had a history of showing up in Abraham's life. Abraham, he would take things into his own hands. He'd try to do things his own way. And he'd kind of screw things up. And God would jump in and he'd bail him out. And all the while, God promised to do great things through this man, Abraham. And at this point in his life, Abraham was 100 years old. Like he was over 100 years old. And finally, all of his previous experiences had brought him to the point where he trusted God completely in this moment. Now I want you to think about God's history in your life. How many times has God shown up? How many times have you made a mess of things trying to do it on your own? Relying on your own power. See, whether you're a Christian or not, I can tell you, I can promise you that God is present. Proverbs 16 verse 9 says, we can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. So why should we trust God? Well, one reason is God's presence. See, Abraham didn't always rely on God, and Abraham didn't always trust in God. And, I would submit that probably Abraham didn't even always believe in God's plans. But in this moment, Abraham was able to trust God because of God's continued presence in his life. We move to verse 6. It says, So Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. Now that right there, that's why most people think that Isaac was probably a little bit older. See, it takes a lot of wood to consume a sacrifice. So they figured that Isaac had to be old enough and strong enough and big enough to carry all the wood. And then Abraham, he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and the 2 of them went together. But Isaac spoke to Abraham, his father, and said, My father! He said, Here I am, my son. And then Isaac said, Look, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? There it is. See, I was waiting for that. Finally, Isaac is taking a look at things, and he's got a few questions. And the Bible puts an exclamation point at the end of my father. It wasn't like he was just, having an idle conversation. He kind of taken a look. He realized he might be in some trouble. So it's not like Isaac and Abraham, they're walking, and Isaac's like, Hey, Dad, great day, isn't it? Wow, look at that mountain. It's beautiful. What a day for a hike. This is so nice. What do you think we're going to have for lunch today, Dad? And, by the way, I was just wondering, I don't see anything. I just wondered what you might be thinking. You might want to sacrifice here. What's going on? No. he had seen nothing. And now he's realizing something's up here, and he's going, Dad, what are you going to do with that knife? And Abraham says this. Abraham says, my son, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering. So the two of them went together. And here we see it again, the faith that Abraham has in God. Hebrews 11, 17 through 19 says this. About this account, Hebrews 11, 17 through 19. It says, by faith Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had received the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son. Even though God had said to him, it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. Abraham reasoned that God could raise the dead, and figuratively speaking, he did receive Isaac back from death. See, Abraham had witnessed God's power time again. He knew that nothing was too big for God. God had promised this nation to come through Isaac, and Abraham believed that promise. Now here's the thing, God has promised you great things as well. He's promised salvation through Jesus Christ. And he's promised an eternity with him in heaven. And we can trust God because of his promise. Moving on to verse 9, it says, then they came to the place of which God had told them. And Abraham built an altar there, placed the wood in order. And he bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And here we see the faith of a son for his father. Here we see the faith of Isaac. Because here's the thing, we know he's big enough and strong enough and old enough to carry all that wood. I'm pretty sure he could probably whip a 100-year-old man. Right? If he didn't want to be tied up, he didn't have to be tied up. But we see him bound on the altar. And Abraham stretched out his hand and he took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And so he said, here I am. And the angel said, do not lay your hand on the lad or do anything to it. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from thee. And then Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and there behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. So Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Isaac breathed a huge sigh of relief. It doesn't say that, but I mean, don't you think he must have? I just think he had to. But Abraham, it says that Abraham called the name of the place, the Lord will provide, Jehovah Jireh. As it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. See, Abraham didn't withhold his only son from God. He trusted God completely. He turned loose of all control and all possessions and all comfort, everything. What are you withholding from God? What are you withholding? Because I'm here to tell you that you can trust God. You can trust God because of his presence. Whether you believe it or not, God has been here from before the very beginning. And he knit you together in the womb, and he knows you better than anybody. Some of you can clearly point to times in your life when God has just shown up, right? And others of you may struggle to see him, but here's the deal. Know today that God is present, that he is unchanging, that he is all-knowing, that he is all-powerful, that he's the beginning and the end, he's the Alpha and the Omega, and he is present. And you can trust God because of his promise. So he's promised to never leave you nor forsake you. He's promised to return. The promise of victory is ours. Like the flowers in the field and the birds in the air, God has promised to provide. And third, we can trust him because of that provision. Abraham had faith that God would provide what was needed. And he didn't waver in that faith. Even as he raised a knife to kill his only son, in that moment, God provided a sacrifice for Isaac. And in our moment, in your moment, God has provided a sacrifice for you, Jesus Christ. And the Bible says that Abraham called the place Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. As it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. In other words, come to the presence of the Lord, and he will provide. Trust in his presence. Trust in his promise. Come to the mountain and he will provide. Why should we trust God? Why should we put our faith in him? Because when we are faithful, God will provide what we need. We've got some friends in Charlotte, David and MC Garrett. And They left, years ago, they left what many of us here would call successful lives. You know, full of promise, full of future. And they left. They packed everything up. They moved to Charlotte, and they moved into the inner city. They started this ministry called 1-7. Now, 1-7 is just from Jeremiah 1-7. That's where God told Jeremiah, he said, don't worry if you're a kid. Don't worry about being a youth. You just go out and say what I tell you to say. Okay? And David and MC, they moved into the projects. Just moved right into the projects, and they started knocking on doors. And the whole idea for them was to reach children. Just reach the kids in this inner city. And then send the kids out to knock on doors and let the kids go change their families and change their neighbors and all those things. That's where the name Jeremiah 1-7 came from. And I'm telling you, this sounds so cliche to say, but literally, from the very beginning, they just lived on faith. They lived on faith. They didn't know where the provision was coming from. They just did what God asked them to do. Somebody needed a mattress, they gave them a mattress off their bed. Somebody needed food, they gave them food out of their pantry. Somebody needed clothes, they literally gave clothes off their back. Tina and I have been there. The kids have been there. We stood, my wife and I stood outside of 1-7's apartments as gang members threw rocks at our vehicle. Had a rock hit right beside my head. David Garrett has had death threats and all kinds of these intense encounters because these gang members in the projects, they didn't want that light of Jesus in their darkness. But still, they continued. We've seen children who had no food in their house go and knock on doors at Christmas to give food away to their neighbors. We've seen it. And now 1-7's got their own apartment building. They've got their own gated area, their own gated community inside the projects. It's relatively safe given the surroundings. They started 1-7 Academy, which began as classes for girls. Now they have girls and boys classes. They have after-school programs. Every Thursday night, they bring all the youth together from 1-7, churches from around the area to come in and feed all these kids, like hundreds of kids. They have one of the most awesome soccer programs in the country. David Garrett actually coaches soccer at the high school. God has done all this because they stepped out on faith and just trusted that God would provide. And He continues to provide everything that 1-7 and everything that David and MC and their family need. Locally, many of you guys probably know Brad Perry. Brad was the senior pastor up here, up on Papa Ridge, up on the hill. You guys know where that's at. Brad was the senior pastor. It's that way. Hey, listen, Brad was there for years. He was in youth ministry, and then he worked into the senior pastor. So he was senior pastor. God had blessed him with a nice stable job, good congregation, salary, house, all those things. A couple years ago, God said, you know what, I want you to get that back. And I want you to step out, and I want you to jump into Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I want you to take over Sullivan County, which was all but dead in terms of the ministry. And I want you to go into the schools, and I want you to build this ministry up. And let's reach our students, and let's reach our coaches, and let's reach our families in that way. And he stepped out. He gave up all of that stability, stepped out, no salary, no house, no nothing guaranteed. And I personally have seen it happen. I've witnessed this over the past 2 years as Fellowship of Christian Athletes in Sullivan County, right here in our own backyard, has gone from reaching virtually no kids to hundreds of kids every week. Hundreds of teams, athletes, families. We've given away hundreds of Bibles over the past year and a half. All because Brad and his family decided they would follow God and just trust that God would provide what they need. Now, how would it look if we all stopped holding on to our stuff? Our agendas, our control. And we started trusting God. What could we accomplish? Imagine the resources that could be used for God if suddenly we were just all obedient in our giving. I know we got bills to pay, we got things to buy and all that, but what if we just trusted in God's provision instead of our own? What about our relationships? Imagine the impact we could have if we just sacrifice our comfort and go and have a tough conversation with somebody, maybe a difficult conversation about Jesus Christ? What would it look like if we just trusted that God would provide the courage and God would provide the words that we needed for that conversation? How about in our profession? Right? What would it look like if we just maybe took a look at our jobs and just asked God, hey, what direction do you want us to go here? You know, it might mean moving, it might mean changing into a job that kind of fits more His direction. Or it could possibly just be that God says, you know what, stay where you're at and just take a stand for me right there in your workplace. Maybe you're holding on too tightly for your own comfort. Maybe God is saying, I want you to get out of your comfort zone and do something for me. Could be that He wants you to go on a mission trip. Maybe He's saying to you, hey, I want you to get on a plane, I want you to go somewhere. Or it might mean that He just wants you to get out of your comfort zone right here. Maybe go down to a soup kitchen and feed the homeless. Maybe get involved with the jail and prison ministries that you have here at this church. Could be that there's an addiction somewhere in your family. You've got drugs and alcohol is standing in the way of the life that God wants for you. And He's just saying, I want you to sacrifice those things so that you can live the life that's more abundant that I have in store for you. And I know it's hard. I know it's difficult to put those things down, but if we're faithful, God provides what we need. Now, I wonder what would have happened. What would have happened if Abraham would have said no? You ever think about that? What if Abraham would have said no? I'm not going to do that. Do you think God might have just pulled the promise from him? I mean, I think that's entirely possible. The Bible said He's tested Abraham, right? Maybe He was. And if that happened, don't you think that Abraham might have lived the rest of his life with a little sense of regret? With just a little bit like, I wonder what I missed out on. We were in Mexico several years ago, and we visited this eco park. Now, eco park is just, it's one of these places where you can hike, you can swim, you can snorkel, all that stuff. They had this really cool part that was a hammock park. That's my favorite thing. You just go in the hammock and just lay there. It's perfect. But at one point, we went to this thing, and it's like this river that goes all the way out to the ocean. It's like this big, natural, lazy river. And you just float down the river, and then along the way you can look around and see, wildlife, plants, and there's rocks and stuff you can jump off of. And so we're floating down the river, and at this one point, my kids and I, we decided that we would jump off this rock. Okay? There's this big rock people jumping off, look fun, we're going to go do that. So we kind of swim over, I can swim. We're swimming on. Get over to the side, we walk up, we get all the way up on top of this rock and go, whew. I ain't gonna lie to you, it was high. It was high. It looked a lot lower from down in the water. And we get up there and it's pretty high. Of course, our son does what boys do. He takes off running, man, and he just jumps. Not thinking, not doing anything, just jumps. Screams the whole way, hits the water, comes up, just loves it. And I'll never forget, then our daughter, it was her turn. Taylor, she jumps up. And I knew when she didn't jump right away, we were in trouble. She stepped back. She said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not jumping that. No. And of course, me being the kind, loving, gentle, understanding, empathetic dad that I am, I said, girl, there's only one way off this rock. So if you want off, you better start jumping, because we're not walking back. By now, a line has started to form. And they're looking at me like I'm anything but a kind and loving and gentle and compassionate father. So we let a few of them go. We let people jump ahead. Taylor, she steps up again. Freezes. I'm not doing that. She steps back. We let a few. This went on for a little while. We let a few more people go. Finally, about this time, I just said, baby, Daddy's with you. I'm with you. I've been here since you were born. And I'm going to be with you through this whole thing. And I said, here's the thing. I get it. It's tough. It's hard. You might do a crazy belly flop off this thing. It's a little bit scary. Now you can choose to say no. You can choose to not do this and walk back down. But here's what I know. At some point, you're going to regret it. At some point. I don't know when. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But at some point in your life, you're going to wish you had taken that leap. So sure enough, she did finally jump. And I promise you, her head had no more than cleared the water. And she wanted to do it again. And again. And again. Now imagine what she would have missed out on if she hadn't taken that leap. Imagine what Abraham could have missed out on if he hadn't put his faith in God. Now what's God calling you to sacrifice? What's he asking you to do? Imagine what you could miss out on if you don't take that leap. So I made that trip to Rwanda. My wife and I, we made that trip. And I struggled a little bit. You know, I had to come to terms with leaving my children, leaving our children. And I had to come to terms with the fact that, hey, when you get on a plane and go across the ocean, all this, you know, anything can happen. But in the end, I really felt like God was asking me to go and to sacrifice my comfort, my time, my security to follow him. And boy, did he provide. Just a couple weeks after we said yes, so our children were really young then, just a couple weeks after he said yes, my wife, Tina, she was having a conversation about her upcoming mission trip with somebody, and she was sharing with that person how we didn't have a clue. Like we said yes, we didn't know what we were going to do with our kids at the time. Like who's going to watch them, what's going to happen, all these things. So somebody comes out from nowhere, these two complete strangers. And they said, well, we overheard your conversation. We just moved to town. We want to share with you our heart for ministry and missions. And we'd like to watch your kids while you're gone. Now remember I said complete strangers, right? Tina came home and told me this. I thought she was nuts. I thought, man, you're crazy. We don't know these people. And then I met Dave and Kay Crouch. And sure enough, God had provided one of the most godly, mature couples imaginable. Strong, secure in their faith. They did have children of their own, so they knew about kids. They had a heart for ministry. These folks even came to our house. They stayed at our house while we were gone so that our kids didn't have to change their routine. God provided safe travel for the entire team. Since that time, I've been to Rwanda 6 more times. We've developed strong relationships in the country. I've had the opportunity to speak to entire communities, to speak at church services, to speak to government officials, to see people come and non-believers come and give their life to Jesus Christ. We've prayed in villages. We've seen babies born year over year. I mean, it's just, you know, you bring it back here and like we've had hundreds and hundreds of people that have supported this ministry. There were 20 kids in Rwanda that were orphans that first year when we went. They had nobody. And so for the past 8, 9 years, they've lived together, those 20 kids, along with the pastor, his wife, and their family, in a little village in southern Rwanda. I've seen people here take their first mission trips. I've seen the impact that it's had on their lives and their families. And the whole time, our kids have witnessed this. They've been part of this with us. And the impact has been enormous. Our life has changed. Our family has changed forever. Because God has indeed provided. So I ask you again, what is he calling you to do? What's he asking you to sacrifice today? Is it your comfort? Your possessions? Your relationships? Your plans? Your control? What are you holding on to so tightly that you're afraid to let go? You know, maybe you're here and you don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Maybe God's just saying, hey, I want you to let go of your insecurities, your doubts, and your fears. And I want you to trust in Jesus. And I want you to take hold, because the world promises so many things and it fails to deliver. But here's the thing. There's nothing more promising than a life that's wholly surrendered to Jesus. Or it could be that you're here today and you've got a relationship with Jesus. You know full well, I know where I'm going to eternity. I know, but what you're worried about is today. What do I got to hold on today to make sure that my plans are fulfilled? Let me tell you that God can and will provide so much more than we ever can on our own. So be willing to turn loose of the death grip that you have on. Let God provide for you the life that only He can. Why should we place God first in our lives? Because when we are faithful, God provides what we need. He's always been there for you, even when you didn't know it. And He's with you now in all areas of your life, even those that you have control of. And He promises to be with you always, even to the end of the age. When we're faithful, God provides what we need. So come to the mountain of the Lord, and He will provide. Let me pray for you. God, thank you so much for this day, for this opportunity, Lord. Thank you for your presence. God, we thank you that you're present. Anytime two or more gather in your name, there you are. We know you're here. We thank you for your presence continually in our life, Lord. We just ask for your continued presence and know that that's true. Lord, we thank you for your promise. We thank you for the promise of Jesus Christ. We thank you for the promise of salvation, the promise of eternity, the promise of victory, the promise of your provision. And we thank you for that provision always. Not, Lord, that you're going to give us everything we want. Not that it's always going to be easy or anything like that, Lord, just that we know when we are faithful that you will provide what we need. I thank you more than anything that what we need most is Jesus Christ. And that sacrifice has already been provided, Lord. It's in His name we pray this morning. Amen.
I've asked Kevin if he would he's going to sing a song here when we're going to have prayer. The Bible tells us that those that come to God must believe that He is, that He's a rewarder of them that diligently seek Him. He's faithful. God is faithful. I believe you've heard that today through this message, that God is faithful. We may not always see, may not show you the full path. He may not show you exactly from point A to point B to C to D how it's all going to go. But He's telling you, hey, if you'll start with me, you'll have faith in me, I'll provide for you all the way. Praise God. And what is it that God's calling you to do? And take a step of faith. Step back. Amen. Do that. And watch God do amazing things in your life. Is God doing amazing things in Johnson City? And just because some hungry people decided to say, hey, we want to do something for God. And we've got our food ministry that's going and just handing out water and food and help and love and kindness. And God is using that. It's just amazing what God will do if you're willing to step out. Now I'm going to ask you if you would stand. Steve, if you would bring that prayer sheet up here. And I'm going to ask those of you that will, if you would come up, around the altar today. Kevin's going to sing this song. I just want to ask you if you just believe with me for these needs. We know that there's some precious people, on this list. And we know that God is able to meet these needs, and we just want to call their names out in prayer and pray for them today. So I'm just going to ask you, if you would just move a little closer. You don't have to. If you don't feel comfortable, that's fine, but just come on up and let's just as a point of contact and a point of agreement, saying we're agreeing together. And we're agreeing together that God is able, to meet these needs. And those of you that are back there, if you just stretch your hand this way, just say, I agree with you. We're going to pray, God, to meet these needs. Father, we love you today. And God, we put our faith in you and our trust in you. And God, you know, God, these needs. God, you know every person's name on this list. God, you know every person out there in this audience, their needs that they have today. God, you know where they are. And we just ask you right now in the precious name of Jesus, God, that you would just begin, Lord, to move, begin, God, to touch in their lives. God, begin to heal and bring restoration, God, to families. God, to break every addiction, God, to break every sickness, God, that's holding people back. We just pray, God, in the name that is above every name. It's above the name cancer. We bind and we rebuke cancer in the name of Jesus. We speak forth the healing power of God to move like only you can. Hallelujah. God, make the crooked places straight. God, straighten those broken bones. God, heal those broken bones. Bring them back together. God, very speedy, very fast. Let them have a quick recovery. Father, we just thank you. God, you're able to do that. God, our faith and our hope is in you today. We come to you. God, we come to you with full assurance that our God is able to do exactly what he said he would do. Praise God. In Jesus' wonderful name we pray. Amen and amen. Thank you, Lord. Praise God. Thank you, Lord. Praise God. Worship the Lord today. Thank you, Jesus.
Hear the voice of the love that's calling. There's a shell that waits for you, and a friend who understands everything you're going through. But you keep standing at a distance in the shadow of your shame. There's a light of hope that's shining. Won't you come and take your place and bring it all to the table? There's nothing he ain't seen before. All your fear, all your sorrow and your sadness, there's a Savior and it calls to bring it all to the table. He can see the way you carry and the fears that hold your heart. But through the cross you've been forgiven, and you're accepted as you are. So bring it all to the table. There's nothing he ain't seen before. For all your trials and all your worries and your burdens, there's a Savior and it calls to bring it all to the table. Come on in and take your place. There's no one who's turned away. And all you sinners, all you saints, come right in and find your grace. Come on in, take your place. There's no one who's turned away. Yeah, all you sinners, all you saints, come right in and find your grace. Bring it all to the table. There's nothing he ain't seen before. For all your fear and all your sorrow and your sadness, there's a Savior and it calls to bring it all to the table. Bring it all to the table. Bring it all to the table.
Praise the Lord. Did you enjoy that today? Aren't you glad? Amen. The Bible talks about Lazarus says this one thing. He's in the tomb and he was dead. The resurrection and the life came, spoke to him, came in John chapter 11. In John chapter 12, it says Lazarus was seated at the table. Amen. He's brought us from the tomb to the table.